Hello, my name is Yvonne. I'm from JK Lifestyle with Yvonne. Today we're meeting with Christine Traxler, and I wanted to meet with Dr. Traxler because she has a very interesting life. She's a practicing physician, and she also has something that she lives with daily, and I'll let her tell you about it. So, how are you today?
I am great. I'm great.
Thank you for joining us, and you're all the way in Hawaii.
Yes. So it's early morning here.
Okay, and it's 11 o'clock a.m. my time. Okay. Could you tell me what type of practice are you engaged in now as a physician?
Yeah, I work in primary care, so I deal with adults and children, pretty much of all ages, and I'm sort of the first stop that anybody goes to when they need a doctor.
One of the things that I wanted you to talk about that I think it's wonderful that you've managed to control and be successful in your profession with. And you suffer from multiple personality disorder?
Yes, yes. It's not called that anymore, but that's effectively what it is.
What is it called?
It's now called dissociative identity disorder. To basically define it as one of the many dissociative disorders that a person can have. So people can have things like where they maybe feel like things aren't real around them. That's dissociation. Even if you're driving down the freeway and you realize you've missed your turn by 5 miles and you were just daydreaming and you just didn't pay attention. But in dissociative identity disorder or multiple personality disorder, that dissociation becomes part of a way of coping so that literally you are separate people inside. So it's the dissociation becomes structural where you literally split off parts of yourself that carry on different experiences and different thoughts and feelings in your own life.
When did you first notice that you had that?
It's not something that you ever know that you have. In fact, many people live with it and don't even know they have it. It's just they're kind of confused. Like maybe they don't always feel like they're themselves, or they find pictures of themselves, or they don't remember that they were even in the picture, or somebody comes up to them that they know, but that person doesn't really know them, so they don't know how would they know them. So that's the extreme form where literally you have lost a part of your time and experience, just some other part of you that has taken over. So it's really just a very big split. So I didn't know. I just felt really confused. Like I didn't know. I had writing from when I was a child that was signed in different names and had different experiences that I don't know what I really thought of that. I thought, oh, that's weird. Why is this here? What does this mean? It just felt very confusing. And yet I was sick. I mean, I still suffered. Dissociative identity disorder, multiple personalities is a disorder of extreme trauma in your early life. So but you don't really remember it, you don't know, because really other parts of you had that experience. So to cope, there is a part of you that goes out into the world, that goes to school, that has dreams, that has relationships. And so I was in college, but I was really very sick. I engaged in self-harm. I was often very suicidal. I just knew that there were things I did that I didn't even know why I did it, because it didn't feel like me. So, and there were times where I literally lost complete time. I don't have it quite to the way some people have it, where they lose, months and years. But there were times where it just felt confusing. And I didn't know what was wrong. And so after I graduated and actually was in residency, which was where I just got so sick, where coping with the stresses of residency left me with self-harm and depression and that kind of thing. So for me, that's how it really started, not knowing. And then I was hospitalized several times, and it took another 3 years before anyone said, oh, I think you have multiple personalities.
When you say sick, do you mean emotionally?
Mentally, yeah, emotionally and mentally, that I just couldn't, their coping mechanisms were poor. It was, relationships were poor. It was just a lot of anxiety and depression and, just functioning okay, but in the stress of residency where every day is stressful, it became just overwhelming where I just couldn't cope. And so through trying to heal, it was very early on that people said, oh, you had a really hard life. Maybe this is part of why. But they didn't know it was multiple personalities until I was 30.
So did you
Even though
notice?
I had it the whole time, I just didn't know.
Okay, so that means like in elementary school, you didn't put your finger on it, although you had certain symptoms or certain ways of thinking or behaving that let you know it's something amiss.
Sure.
Somehow.
Well, in elementary school, it wasn't me in this person, that I'm talking to you. So I didn't really have a lot of memories of that. So people who have this multiple personalities often say, I don't really remember my childhood at all. Not the good times, not the bad times, none of it. So that would have been a clue that I didn't really think about. Well, why didn't I remember that? So some of those memories have like since been uncovered because like as multiple personalities, you can come together in sort of a shared experience that you now know sort of what happened, but it wasn't, you still know it's not you.
How many personalities do you have?
It's sort of a myth to think that it's always a set number because it can change. Like there can be a personality that just kind of like loses their need to be there. And so they will kind of fade away a little bit, even though they're still technically there. They're not there in your experience of life. So there have been as many as 30 some, but now it's more like 15 or 16, somewhere in that range. But again, most don't have like a big, they don't like all just jump out at once. And a lot of them are just there as part of an internal experience and not really part of functioning in the outdoors.
Have they integrated in any kind of way? So
Um,
that one person or two of them know about 4 or 5 other ones? Have you been able to pull them together?
so in therapy, and it's taken 30 some years, now everyone sort of knows who everyone is. And so the experiences become more shared and more like an integrated experience. But there are some therapists who think you have to integrate into one, that you have to sort of get rid of everybody and just have one sort of host that lives their life to the exclusion of all others. But we did not want to do that. We chose not to do that.
These,
So we
go
still
ahead.
think of ourselves as a we, but it's not like it's more like a we that copes and loves and has empathy for one another. Therefore, it's not as confusing and it's not as distressing.
Mhm.
So when I think of me, I still know that I'm a we, that I
Mhm.
am part of a whole, even though and for us that's a good thing because it doesn't feel any different really than living any other life.
Okay, when these personalities first started coming about, was it the result of a traumatic experience that you may have had, or is it? I'm very happy. It was my birthday. We're celebrating it. It's a lot of people, a lot of family, friends around. That's one personality, or was it because I saw my dog get run over and it was so traumatic for me because I really loved that dog and had it. And in order for you to cope, another personality developed. What caused these personalities to start doing this?
So in multiple personality, it has to be a prolonged abuse, and it is almost always child abuse, and it has to be probably before the age of 4, when a child really is forming their personality and forming who they are. So that you just, because of the trauma of maybe day in and day out, or several major traumas that are sort of superimposed upon a horrible early existence, you form, there has to be a part of you that is separate from that trauma in order to get up and go to school and live your life. So it's not necessarily a personality that takes over for a literal short period of time, but is one that maybe is the one that has gone to school every day for the whole of elementary school. But then when they go home, or when a traumatic event happens, it sort of gets shunted to a part that is sort of sacrificed. Like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. It's going to be you.
So does that mean like almost every time you came across a trigger, or you came across a traumatic event or something that affected you so deeply, it branched off into another personality?
No, but it might have been defaulted to another personality that already experienced trauma. So in our life, later in life, when we had sexual trauma, it was literally almost like you just said, that part belongs to you. That part may already exist, but you sort of give that experience to that part.
Mhm.
So then when it's over, and then that you have to go out into the world the next day, you can, because some other part of you has taken that experience. But it doesn't have to be a new part each time.
Okay, I get it. What is it like being an adult, having that condition? And are there times that you now still, you may have to call up another personality to deal with some of the stresses that go along with adult life?
Yes, every once in a while, not usually in our daily life. So if I go to work, uh, there might be a subtle change. So the part of me, I'll just say the part of me, because that's the easiest way to describe it, that maybe goes in and talks to a child who's sick, would be very different from the doctor part of me that would go in to talk to an alcoholic who's drunk and angry. It's,
Mhm.
it's literally, now you might recognize in yourself that there are different parts of you that do that, because
Mhm.
you don't act the same way to people in your life.
True.
But for us, it is literally a different part. With
Mhm.
other parts now, just observing that part and integrating the experience, but it's really not them. It's like having a work self and a home self. And you just know they're not you, but it is you.
That's, I don't think I have an official diagnosis of a personality disorder or whatever, but I know that sometimes when I'm at work,
Mhm.
I behave one way and I have to show another face. I have to assume another way of behaving, acting, talking. And when I get home, it's like, thank goodness, now I can, become the person that I normally am. So
Right.
I think to some degree, you know, we all have to learn how to adjust, adapt, and find is that a dog? It's a
Yeah, it's my
poodle?
puppy.
He's cute. But you have to find some way to help you cope with a situation, whether
Yes.
it's good, whether it's positive, or whether it's not. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
You just have to do that in
Right.
order to make it in this world.
Yeah, exactly. So it is, and so it is for people who have multiple personalities, because it was something that happened to them very early in life, and that switching or developing a splitting off part of yourself was part of how you coped. It becomes sort of easier to do that in later life. So you don't necessarily do it when you're, 30, 40, 50 years old in the same way as you do it when you're a child, but it's just
Mhm.
becomes so easy to do that you just cope that way.
I want to ask you, um, do your personalities have distinct mannerisms, excuse me for saying, mannerisms? Say for instance, if a person was observing you, could they tell when you're each personality?
I think people who know me really well will say they do. It's still, there are people who probably know me, in my sort of semi-professional life, who would say they've never seen it. But people who know me, who maybe have lived with me, or my children, when I told my older daughter, and she was like maybe 10, that I had this, she goes, "Oh, I know, Mom." She said, "I call out the children in you whenever I want something." So I thought, oh my gosh, at 10 years old, she already figured it out. She should have told me at the time, but
Mhm.
I didn't, she probably figured it out before I did. So yeah, there's just that subtlety of a change in tone of voice, or a change in dress, or a change in mannerisms, and a way of thinking that's just different.
How did you learn to work around that disorder?
The first thing, the only way to survive with this sort of disorder, because it is a trauma disorder, is to uncover what happened and to have empathy for all of your parts. So the disorder becomes, deadly when you hate part of yourself. And I mean, it's not, I shouldn't say it that way, but so if one part really hates another, that internal battle is what leads to self-hatred in a way. I mean, it's sort of self-hatred, but it's not, because you hate another part of you that's not you.
Mhm.
But it becomes very destructive. And a lot of people with multiple personalities are suicidal a lot, or have self-harm, or just engage in negative behaviors.
Mhm.
Or there might be a child who, eats candy all the time. Well, that's bad for you. And an adult who like not, knows that that's not bad for you, but can't control that other part. So you do have to have empathy so that you parent yourself. So that a lot of parts in multiple personality are children. So it is literally like having a classroom of children, and empathizing with each part of how they came to be, and why they came to be, and why they are the way they are. And when you can do that, suddenly your life becomes easier.
Something you just said, if a person has this disorder, but they're not aware of it, they just know, they feel different at different times, that they know maybe there are periods they cannot remember, but they don't know what it is, and they live their life not knowing it. And that probably does cause them to have a lot of problems as they're, maturing, as they're adults, because they've never
Exactly.
been diagnosed. What are some of the things that a person who's not diagnosed would go through?
And well, I would say one of the main things that they go through, they're often misdiagnosed. Maybe because doctors and psychiatrists, a lot of them don't recognize it. So by not recognizing it, they're not treated, the patient's not treated correctly. So if I see someone and they think, oh, this person is really animated one time and really depressed the next, they must be bipolar, not thinking, oh, this is two separate alters inside the same body who just have different personalities. So they might be medicated. So suddenly, and then I was medicated for a long time before people knew.
Mhm. Would it be
So I was
possible,
treated as
would it be
bipolar.
possible, would they be possible to diagnose them self-medicate because they're feeling a certain way? Let me have a
Oh,
couple of extra drinks, let me,
yep.
you know,
Yeah,
I'm
so you
depressed, so
feel,
let me take medicine for depression and,
yes,
you know.
yes. So, but when you don't know, you're treated, you think something's, you don't realize it. You don't realize that, what you're dealing with is something that's based on trauma, because maybe you don't even remember the trauma. You just know
Mhm.
something's wrong with you. So they get diagnosed as depression. They might get diagnosed as another personality disorder, like borderline personality disorder,
Mhm.
or some other range of things, not recognizing that that's just part of having splits of yourself. And so I was really lucky that, I mean, extremely lucky that someone saw it, and I went on a path of dealing with this as trauma and dealing with this in a way that was thoughtful and recognizing, that taught me how to love my body and love myself and love all the parts of myself.
How was it getting through medical school and doing the I know it's very rigorous. My
Medical school
brother,
itself wasn't hard because literally there was one part of us who did that, and it was fine. But after that, in residency, when you're suddenly thrust into this, seeing traumatic things every day, one of the hardest for me was going to pediatric rotation, where there were sick children and abused children, and suddenly I was sort of faced with my own abusive past, and it just became incredibly hard. So that was kind of where things fell apart. Like in your mind, I was like, okay, I'm gonna grow up, I'm gonna go to medical school, and I'm gonna be fine, and not even realizing that the stressors is what makes you not fine after a while, and then you can't cope under that stress. So that's where things fell apart. And so I literally had to rebuild myself from there, through
Mhm.
multiple hospitalizations and multiple therapists, to find really where it was. And even then, you need that therapist to help you cope with the harder times and to get you past, where things might just fall apart.
Mhm. I was gonna say my brother's a doctor, and I know going through medical school and the residency and internship and all that, it's kind of grueling.
It is.
It's kind of, and then you had not only that to deal with, but you had to work with all this other stuff to get through that. So that takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of determination and focus. You know?
Yes, because ultimately I realized that, and it kind of came over time, that I realized that I couldn't be the best doctor I wanted to be unless I worked on myself and healed. There's a lot of doctors out there that just aren't healthy people. So for me to become that healthiest version of myself meant that I could help people become the healthiest version of themselves authentically, as my authentic real me, which just happens to have multiple personalities. But that part is what's authentic about me.
How are you doing today? I know
Wow.
you, I know you're successful, and I know you mentioned after the interview with me, you're going to the office to work. But how are
Yeah.
you doing today?
I do really well. Um, I have two children, they're grown. I have two grandchildren. I have spent a number of years as a writer, because that's really how I uncovered this. Um, because through writing, I journaled since childhood. So,
Mhm.
but then, but so all of that journaling survived from 50, 60 years ago.
Mhm.
And so through, writing and all of that, I do feel the healthiest version of myself. And
Mhm.
so I really try to recommit my life to helping other people, recognizing when they have trauma, and really being the best. I mean, really being the best doctor that I can be, and the best parent and the best grandparent. And so, yeah, I mean, I still go to therapy because I kind of feel like you have to, pretty much for the
Mhm.
rest of your life, because you never know. Like you said, there are times where things can go off the rails a little bit.
Mhm.
So you just need that person to, outside of you, to just say, oh, wait, let's talk about this. So, but yeah, well, mostly because I really do feel that sense of I have a life. I mean, I sometimes I feel like I wish I was like everyone and had my whole life, and didn't have to devote so much of my life to healing.
Mhm.
But having done that, I need to make the best of that.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Dr. Traxler. I so appreciate it.
No problem.
I really don't know what to say, but I will say this. For what you've gone through, you had the courage to look at it. You had the courage to work on it. You've accomplished so much. Much respect.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. I will put Dr. Christine Traxler's information in the box below the video. Thank you very much.